A man in Queensland has been sentenced for defending his home from an invasion using pepper spray. Yeah, that's the non-lethal can of irritant, which can be quite unpleasant. That is the whole point after all. But it is also infinitely less likely to kill somebody than a baseball bat or even a fist. The man lived in Mackay and used the spray after his window had been broken and someone was trying to gain illegal entry into his home. The magistrate told the man, who is called the offender but is actually the victim of a real crime, breaking and entering, that his actions were a misconceived attempt by you to protect your property. No. With all due respect, there is nothing misconceived about using non-lethal force to protect your home from an unknown but certainly illegal home invasion. And I've said it before, but I'll say it again, that when the police and the courts behave like this, they are actually protecting the criminals by violently disarming the criminals' victims. And the hypocrisy is rank because, as I covered in a video a week or so ago, people like opposition leader Susan Lee support the disarming of law-abiding Australians while they enjoy the peace of mind of armed security, and in Susan's case, when she personally used a semi-automatic rifle for her own self-protection when she was a younger woman. You can watch episode 119 of the Topher Project for more on that. And this is no laughing matter, because what's seemingly being missed in all of this outrage about this Mackay man possessing and using pepper spray is that it worked. It protected him and his home. My name's Topher Field, this is the Topher Project, and I help busy Australians to keep up with the world as it changes around us. I am 100% viewer supported. I don't have any advertisers or sponsors, although I'm hoping that one day I will. So far, none have been brave enough. So please help to keep the Topher Project going by buying me a coffee via the button at topherfield.net, and be sure to check out my best-selling books about human rights and civil disobedience, along with my multi-award-winning DVD, Battleground Melbourne, and my t-shirts and hoodies and more at goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com. Contrast this criminal prosecution of this homeowner who defended himself with pepper spray with the news from Victoria just yesterday that yet another innocent person is in hospital with stab wounds after his home, where he didn't have pepper spray, was invaded by numerous assailants. And in Victoria rather, the run of machete attacks does not even seem to be slightly slowing down, despite Premier Jacinta Allen's ban on machete sales, and just recently a 33-year-old man has lost his hand to what appears to have been an attempted phone robbery at the Central Square shopping centre in Altona. Now, his arm was badly damaged by one of the attackers and was later amputated completely in surgery. The people responsible for that attack were in their mid-teens, just 14 and 15 years of age. And on the same day, also in Victoria, another 17-year-old boy was stabbed in a completely separate incident. Need I mention the carjackings and the shop invasions to go along with this rhythm of supermarket shopping centre stabbings? This is happening Australia-wide, and in most of Australia, we're not even allowed the most basic non-lethal means of self-defence. And as this Queensland case proves, firstly, having pepper spray helps. And secondly, if you do provide for your own self-defence, you will end up on charges yourself. The police, on the other hand, well, they aren't just given the benefit of lethal forms of self-defence, including guns, but also a suite of less lethal and non-lethal options, including tasers and, yes, pepper spray. And they have the benefit of body armour and usually arriving in pairs or packs. They have every single advantage. Thing is, they always arrive at the crime scene well after the crime has started, and often after the crime has ended, which means that criminals can be confident that their victims are disarmed thanks to the police, and as long as they don't hang around too long after a crime, they are unlikely to ever have to face the police. The police and courts are literally running a protection racket for violent criminals, making sure that they get home from work safely without any undue risk of being harmed by one of the people that they are harming. And whenever someone like me says that we should absolutely 100% allow Australians to carry weapons for the purpose of their own self-defence, the objection is always twofold. Firstly, the criminals will get the weapons as well. Newsflash, they already have them. And the second objection is, but what about the safety of the police officers? The police don't want to have to risk getting shot or stabbed or some such thing. And because of that fear, the need to protect the police, that they might show up 20 minutes after a crime has been committed and there might be an offender that they have to face who's armed. And because of that fear, the rest of us, the ones who are the actual prospective victims of crime, we get disarmed completely. We have to face the armed offenders completely disarmed in some misguided attempt to protect police officers. But because the criminals ignore the weapons laws completely, now the victims, well, we're the only ones disarmed and we're getting stabbed and shot while we wait for the armed police to show up. We are denied guns, tasers, and even pepper spray in most of Australia, so that the people who are allowed guns, tasers, pepper spray, and body armour don't have to risk getting hurt. But the thing is, the people who aren't supposed to have weapons, the criminals, well, they have weapons and they can't get hurt by their victims either. So the police and the criminals are the only ones being kept safe. And the victims of the stabbings, the home invasions, the carjackings, etc., well, we're just collateral damage. We are an acceptable loss in the pursuit of safety for the police and the criminals. And if one of us common folk who aren't special enough to get a badge or a gun, or politically high up enough to get private federal police security details, if we decide that this arrangement is unacceptable and that our human rights are being violated for the protection of criminals and the government, but I repeat myself, and then we do actually make preparations for our own self-defense, well, then the government makes sure that we pay for it. In the case of this unfortunate Mackay man who used pepper spray to protect himself in his home, the magistrate said you should know the law and know that these things are prohibited. No, they shouldn't be prohibited. And it is, in my opinion, the people who are actively disarming the victims of crime for the protection of the criminals who are criminals themselves, whether they wear a badge or a wig. And as bad as the situation in Queensland is, and as poor as this magistrate's attitude is, and it is pretty bad, a magistrate in Victoria has found a way to go one better, in a way that I hope will never be outdone in Australia, ever. You may have heard the news about a year ago about a young violent offender who had hundreds of charges dropped because of his age. He was 14. Despite the fact that he kept up his violent offending over multiple rounds of being caught, bailed, going back to his violent ways, being caught, bailed, going back to his violent ways, and so on. Well, this charming individual is now 15, and he was back before Victorian Magistrate Gail Hubble once again charged for offences while on bail. Not only did Magistrate Hubble bail this person again, she explicitly did not apply any supervision orders to him because she stated outright that he simply wouldn't comply with them. This is someone who has admitted to 6 burglaries, 14 car thefts, 4 robberies, 3 shop break-ins, and a partridge in a pear tree. He has collected the whole set, and he's kept doing more every time he's been released on bail. Magistrate Hubble literally said she's lost count of how many times I've given him bail. Now, to us dim-witted, unwashed masses, we might be tempted to think that if you already know that someone won't comply with bail conditions, that might be a really, really good reason to not give them bail. But oh no, Magistrate Hubble knows better than you or I. She knows that the right thing to do when a repeat violent offender with no respect for the public and no respect for the justice system, who is dead set certain to break bail conditions, the right response from the justice system is to simply not impose any bail conditions, because that way they can't get broken. Clever, right? I know, I wouldn't have thought of that either. And now this individual is back out in public, surrounded by people who are disarmed by our government, our politicians, our police, and our courts, not for their own protection, but for the protection of these violent thugs. The hardest part about this story for me is that this is not the first time I've talked about this. This video about how we need more than just capsicum spray is from last month, and I've been talking about this for well over 10 years now. And with the wave of violent crime that we're seeing Australia-wide, this will not be the last time I talk about it either. I don't know what it's going to take to get Australians to no longer accept being disarmed by our police and our courts. What's it going to take for us to stand up for our human right to self-defense? Our taxes are paying for the police and the courts who disarm us for the protection of criminals, and then we pay again for the justice system that keeps releasing the same criminals back onto our streets so that they can prey upon more disarmed victims. And then the police have the temerity to show up 20 minutes after the fact with their pepper spray and tasers and guns and body armor and ask the victim of violent crime, what happened? I'll tell you what happened. We trusted you. We believed you when you said, hey, you don't need weapons, we will protect you. And then you didn't. You couldn't. And thanks to you, we can't protect ourselves either. I don't know how this gets fixed, but I do know that the current situation is completely unacceptable because the victims are ending up in hospital or dead and the violent thugs are getting off scot-free, and that is exactly the opposite of how it should be. Tell me in the comments what you think is going to happen from here. How does this get fixed? Because honestly, I don't know. Australians just keep asking the government to fix their problems instead of recognising that the government is their problem. And I don't know how we're going to fix this one. My name's Topher Field. This is the Topher Project, and I am 100% viewer supported. So please buy me a coffee via the button at topherfield.net so I can stay caffeinated and angry, because that's where I do my best work. And check out my best-selling books on civil disobedience. There's Good People Break Bad Laws, all about government, human rights, and civil disobedience in the modern age. Then there's my second book, Good Christians Break Bad Laws, all about the theology of civil disobedience. Plus there's my multi-award-winning DVD, Battleground Melbourne, which is all about how my fellow Victorians pushed back against Daniel Andrews when he turned into a petty tyrant during COVID. Then there's my t-shirts and hoodies in a range of designs, all available from goodpeoplebreakbadlaws.com. Thank you for watching to the end. Tell me in the comments how you think we can fix this problem. Please like, subscribe, and as always, think free.